When the session ends, the admin begins. From progress notes to insurance claims, managing a practice takes time. Simple Practice is the all-in-one EHR built specifically for therapists to streamline your workflow and give you your hours back.
Start with a 7-day free trial, then get 50% off your first 3 months. Just go to simplepractice.com.
What if you could stop being the office manager, bookkeeper, marketing director, and tech support all at once and just be the therapist?
Buying Time has helped therapists, providing an entire team of specialists who manage the details behind the scenes. Download their free systems inventory checklist at buyingtimellc.com/MTSG.
You're listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide, where therapists live, breathe, and practice as human beings. To support you as a whole person and a therapist, here are your hosts, Curt Widhalm and Katie Vernoy.
Welcome back, Modern Therapists. This is the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. I'm Curt Widhalm with Katie Vernoy, and this is the podcast for therapists about the things that go on in our practices, the things that go on with our clients, our reactions to those things. And we are in the middle of Shark Month on the podcast, or as we've been talking about kind of the new format of the show and being able to go into deeper dives on some of the topics. This is actually AI month. And do you remember when the biggest third wheels in your sessions was maybe a client's overbearing parent coming in and telling you about everything that's going on during their week, or partner who texted too much? How many clients have you had that have just handed over their phone just to show you a text conversation between them and one of their friends or one of their loved ones?
To be fair, that still happens.
In that way, it still seems like those are simpler times, because today we have a new kind of third wheel in our sessions, and that's the algorithm of AI. And when clients are now bringing their own AI into therapy. Now, we have crafted ethics codes around when therapists direct clients to use AI, and we had largely sidestepped. If clients are using AI, that's its own whole separate issue. And as you and I have done presentations, as we've gotten feedback from the podcast about stuff, some of the questions that we get, what happens when clients bring AI into therapy?
Yeah.
That's what this episode is about. So today we are diving into the world of AI in the therapy room. Clients who bring in chat logs as homework, the rise of the endlessly agreeable algorithms, how to handle a digital companion that is currently out validating your hundreds of thousands of dollars of clinical training. So let's dive in.
Yeah, I think this is an important topic because more and more AI has become pervasive in how folks are interacting with the world. I think about how often I'm interacting with Claude or ChatGPT or Google AI. You've got Gemini, and using it as an assistant, right? As some sort of helpful tool to move through things more quickly, offload some of the grunt work, so to speak. But I don't know about you, Curt, but I've been hearing a lot of folks talking about having their perspective validated by ChatGPT related to arguments with a partner, or writing emails and basically running all of their communication with folks through their AI bot of choice. And so it becomes really challenging, I think, to work with folks if you don't understand what's actually happening or why it's so important. So I'm excited to dig in. When we started talking about what to do with this episode, what was your initial thought around how we would approach it? Because I went in and I did a deep dive. I worked with Claude to try to sort through some other things. So I've actually used AI to help with this AI topic. But how have you seen it show up the most? Like, what has been your biggest concern about making sure our audience is AI savvy enough to be able to work with it clinically?
most of the way that I've seen AI show up in my practice falls into, I think, three categories. Number one is clients who are using AI in between sessions around the very same topics that we're talking about
Yeah.
and using it as kind of an addition. Sometimes they bring it in as, why aren't you picking up on these things? Kind of a critique
Sure.
of the therapeutic work that we are. So that's the first category. The second category is, as we both kind of alluded to here, trying to make sense of relationships or using it to help interpret other relationships. I've had multiple clients talk about either they themselves are using one of the AIs in order to respond to typically dating partners and not
Yeah.
coming up with their own reactions, or having dating partners who are using AI and responding to them. So that's kind of the second category, where it's people who are offloading their thinking into the algorithm and then responding as whatever the algorithm says. And then third is a growing concern that I'm seeing particularly with young men, which is offloading their entire social lives and dating lives into AI girlfriends. So
Mhm.
I am seeing AI play out more and more, but those are the three big areas that are showing up in my practice. And I assume that if it's happening with me, it's happening with others.
Absolutely. And I think there's the offloading of thinking, I think, goes even further. I've even seen for myself, I have started doubting sometimes. I'm like, what do I think about this? And then I'm like, let me just put it into Claude real quick and let me run it through Google real fast. And there's a whole article, and there's a million articles that I found. I really did go down a rabbit hole, but I'll link to all of those in the show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. But there's an article about the drive to cognitive death. It's a very, psychodynamic, deep kind of article around this need to make everything easy, and you stop critical thinking, you stop having your own thought. That's obviously a very dangerous impact of AI, but I think the big piece is when someone has completely immersed themselves, it becomes almost addictive that they're constantly interacting with AI. They have a kind of parasocial relationship or those types of things. It can be very obvious that it's of concern. I think some of these other kind of typical use, those things can also be clinically relevant. And so I want to make sure that we're not leaving out the folks like you and me who are kind of just interacting with it as an assistant, as a helpful thing. I'll take pictures and redesign my backyard. Like, I think that it can be very seductive and it's frankly fun. And so I wanted to talk about why this is of concern overall and what we want to do with it clinically. And concern is more neutral than, oh my gosh, this is horrible. But I do want to reference a couple of studies that I saw. One was Fang et al. In 2025, and it was a 4-week randomized controlled trial, lots of participants, 981, over 300,000 messages. And in that article, they found that higher daily chatbot use was correlated with more loneliness, more emotional dependence, more problematic use, and lower socialization. And so when people had much higher trust in AI, there was more emotional attachment tendencies, there was a lot of harm. So that's one. The other one, and I saw when I told you about this before we hit record, I saw your eyebrows raise a little bit. I think you were kind of taken with this one, is a Dohnani et al. 2026. So I might be saying that incorrectly. In Nature Mental Health, technological folie à deux. And I thought that is fascinating. And it speaks directly to the sycophancy that you're talking about, where I have an idea. AI then reinforces it for me. You are so brilliant. This is absolutely right. And then I seek more information, and it goes down a rabbit hole where we're just completely validating whatever has been in your brain. And so I think it can be very dangerous. I mean, especially we can think about folks who have magical thinking or psychosis. Those things can be very dangerous. But this also gets to the safety issues around crisis and crisis response. I mean, there have been situations where folks have been told that their ideas on how they might kill themselves and how they might die by suicide were great ideas, and this is what you need to be doing, and all of those things, because they were just reinforcing what the user was saying. And so it's really important for clinicians to make sure that they're assessing use, that they're doing appropriate psychoeducation, those types of things, because this is a big deal. This is a new entity that is designed to keep us engaged, designed to make us feel good. And the way that happens is this sycophancy. And we're going to go into more detail in a CE episode later in this month. But I think there's a lot here for clinicians to pay attention to. And I think saying, well, AI is bad, we can't use it at all, I think is short-sighted because of our clients already using it and it's already entering into our treatment rooms. Let's talk about why Curt and I both use Simple Practice. Simple Practice is an all-in-one EHR that is HIPAA compliant, HITRUST certified, and built specifically for therapists.
For me, it's the integrated client communication. Messages from clients land straight in the chart, so I'm not copying things over from 3 different apps or emails or trying to remember who said what where.
For me, one of the things that saved me gigantic headaches is insurance billing. It was simple back when I was in network, and it stayed just as simple now that I'm out of network doing courtesy billing for my clients. That used to be the thing I dreaded most, and now it just runs. And if you're just starting out or growing your practice, they also have a credentialing service that helps you get paneled independently.
It takes the total headache out of insurance enrollment, giving you full autonomy over your own contracts without any middleman platforms taking a cut.
If you're ready to simplify the business side of your practice, now is the perfect time to try Simple Practice.
Start with a 7-day free trial, then get 50% off your first 3 months. Just go to simplepractice.com to claim the offer. Again, that's simplepractice.com. Like you're saying, this is a massive therapeutic opportunity.
Yeah.
It's being able to see the unfiltered versions of clients a lot of times with how they're entering in prompts and being able to see them in a way that they might not necessarily be interacting with you as a therapist.
Yeah.
And I think that there's opportunity here. And if you as a clinician are coming in as very judgmental about AI use, you're going to miss out on this opportunity. So my first kind of thoughts around this is really in the way that I've tried to approach this is with curiosity. And let's look into this. Let's see what you're getting out of this, what you're seeking in being able to share these chat logs. And part of this is looking at what are they getting out of the AI use in the first place? Is it the sycophancy? Is it the lack of judgment, the positive reinforcement, and being able to put that in the context of how their attachments are, how their upbringing is, how their reactions to the world are? If it's really coming from a place of, this is a place where I feel understood, that's a avenue to be able to explore in some of the positivity and validation there. Is it rather the accessibility of having something there at 2 a.m. when a therapist isn't available or their friends aren't available? Is there any number of different areas where it feels like something is missing in their real life is part of the evaluation that goes on. And that's before we actually get to any of the content that they're putting into it. I'm oftentimes surprised at how often the artificial intelligence chats that I have seen have actually provided fairly decent insight into some of the client's answers. So it's quickly, for a lot of people, becoming the go-to place to search for answers to problems, and particularly problems that are more relational or subjective in nature rather than going to a traditional Google search or something like that. But really, where I end up finding this is validating that there are needs, that this is an avenue where they are expressing their needs, and seeing how this relationship with artificial intelligence is either something that they're doing in a way that is healthy and adaptive, or if it is a sign of something that is a larger problem.
When someone is going to a chatbot, especially a more generalized chatbot for advice or opinions, I think there are ways for it to be healthy and adaptive. I'll agree with that. I think there's a real need for caution if the client or the individual doesn't have an understanding of the underlying mechanisms of how AI is built and what it's built for. The folks who have created AI chatbots and large language models are designing it to keep you engaged. They're designing it to be very agreeable because folks like that. They also are making it more human-like in order to make it feel more welcoming, more relatable. And so, like social media, like a lot of the things that we engage with, part of what happens in our use is this, whether it's dopamine or feel good, whatever it is, it seems like there is an element of this that we are reinforced for staying in this environment. I think with some of the things that I've heard and read, and I can try to find yet more articles if it's of interest that we can put in the show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. But people who are incentivized to use AI for work, for example, will oftentimes make work and be constantly in Claude, ChatGPT, whatever white labeled AI bot that their company has, and having constantly ding and come back, and they're supposed to come back and create the next prompt and have it do the next thing and all of those things. So even if the primary usage is at work, there is this huge time that's maybe spent in these environments. And so I think being able to assess the use, why are you using it? What's the function of it? How often are you using it? Are you only using it for work? Are there other relational, emotional elements to it? Is there, as you're describing, Curt, is there therapy adjacent work? Are you talking about therapy and processing or therapy sessions? Are you seeking outside coaching from a chatbot? Knowing their relationship to AI, I think, is a initial piece, because in our field, it feels like AI has been not villainized, but we're very cautious.
Sure. Yeah.
In other professions, the professions that some of our clients are in, as I'm mentioning, they may have been reinforced for using AI. That it may be something where their work, quote unquote, thinking partner is now a chatbot, and they have an AI assistant, and so they're predisposed to be in these spaces. And so I think a strong assessment from the beginning, an ongoing assessment of how it's being used, I think is the initial first step. Being able to do some psychoeducation on sycophancy, to be able to talk about safety and treating AI chatbots as public spaces and only putting in the information that you would publicly share, for example, is something that's really important. Now, there's AI self-help bots. There's a lot of other AI opportunities out there that may have more secure environments. They may be HIPAA compliant. They may have those things. We're not reviewing those specifically on this episode. But unless someone is very clear on how their data is being used, I think that that's something that as a therapist, you want them to consider, because if they're sharing their mental state, if they're sharing their medical diagnoses, if they're sharing those types of things, and they have learning turned on, they're helping the AI chatbot, or they're using the free version, whatever it is, their data may be accessible and reconstitutable. And that's something that we want to pay attention to, because I feel that we're kind of the stewards of our clients' privacy when we can be.
Let's be real. Most therapists don't need more tools, they need more support. And it's not just one person they have to hire, train, and manage. When you work with Buying Time, you're getting an entire team of specialists with expertise in admin, bookkeeping, marketing, automation, and client support. I've been a happy client since 2015, and that team approach has made all the difference. Buying Time supports therapists with all the behind-the-scenes work that keeps your practice running smoothly.
Here's what sets Buying Time apart. Many virtual support companies charge you to find a VA, then leave you to manage that person yourself. With Buying Time, you're not paying for recruiting, you're getting a fully managed team. That means no worrying about who's handling what, no scrambling when someone is unavailable, and no spending your evenings following up on unfinished tasks. You have one trusted partner backed by a team of experts. And because they believe your business should run efficiently, they've created a free systems inventory checklist to help you uncover hidden expenses, eliminate unnecessary software, and simplify your systems. Visit buyingtimellc.com/MTSG to download your free checklist today. There's a lot that you're saying that I think is where part of our responsibility when clients are bringing in artificial intelligence in this way is explaining to them the mechanics of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And putting it in terms that are rather candid about how AI is not an objective third party.
Yeah.
It predicts what you want to hear. It validates cognitive distortions just as easily. It doesn't necessarily always go so far as to telling you exactly what you want to hear, but it can be ultimately just there to continue to engage you in ways to continue to make you move forward. And what we want is to separate out the healthy uses of artificial intelligence with clients from the unhealthy ones.
Yeah.
And that involves promoting critical thinking. That
Yes.
it's curious in as you're talking about the ways that artificial intelligence is permeating the workplace and ways that you and I use it. And then I hear my young teenager at home come in and he's, spouting, all AI use is bad. You know, and if there's a side that I'm going to have him follow on just in his own opinions, I'd prefer it to be on that side. But if there's people who are engaging with this, it's helping them to be able to discern, is this just telling me what I want it to hear, or is this actually providing me with advice? Now, one of the strategies that I use with my clients is let's put in the opposite information and see if we get the same answers.
Yeah. That's a
And
good one.
this helps to recognize that AI will validate whatever side is going on, and it can't be used as an objective truth. And with the couple of clients that I've done with this with is helping them to come to recognize and be able to better convey what their subjective truth in a situation is. And for all my DBT therapists out there, hi, how are you? That's exactly what I'm doing, is helping them to build a better way of effectively communicating, so that way they're not just going into their next interactions with their loved ones, with their dating partners, whoever it might be, with this idea that I am right and this is the only way that things can be, but more, here's what I'm trying to say and here's what I'm hoping that you'll be able to hear out of this from me in a more effective way.
That's awesome.
This becomes a little bit more complicated when I don't know if you've had couples bring in
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't do a lot of couples work, and I haven't had couples bring this in, but I can only imagine if couples are trying to say, this is why I'm right. And then it ends up being what I would imagine is, all right, now I got to teach both of you how to be critical thinkers about what you're putting into a chatbot.
Well, and I think the same exercise could apply. Have them put in their partner's perspective. It helps them to think about their partner's perspective and then see how that perspective is also validated. So I think critical thinking is a clear one. I think the other thing is related to critical thinking and cognitive surrender is making sure that you ask the questions in session and teach your client to ask the questions that are going to get beyond what their chatbot friend has suggested to them. And we've got the whole AI de-skilling episode that talks about how to do that for clinicians. But seeking out what is inaccurate about this, where are the sources, going and actually reading the original information that's creating these perspectives, talking about it with somebody who has their own mind and is thinking differently. I think it's something where if you can slow the client down and ask for their thinking, I think there can be a lot of rich work because this is just another piece of information that's flowing in. If they get too far into that reliance on the chatbot, I think then you might be looking at more addiction or dependence kind of interventions versus someone that's just under-resourced, feeling alone, and seeking out Chat or Claude or Gemini or whatever to think things through and feel less alone. And so I think it's important that we recognize our responsibility here because sometimes, especially with all of the sycophancy and the smart sounding words and all of the things, the results that you get can be very seductive.
Mhm.
And so unless you recognize that and see it for yourself and do some of these practices for yourself, you might go down that same rabbit hole with your client. I mean, this can also go into like the pseudo diagnosis or the misinformation spirals that can happen where I give you all my information and then it kind of keeps, that confirmatory bias keeps coming up. It's not the same as a Google search. It can be worse, but it can also be better because it's a little bit more personalized. What are your thoughts on someone using an LLM chatbot to try to sort through information from medical doctors or diagnosis or concerns about that? Because I have mixed feelings because I've actually used it for myself a little bit, but I think there's a lot of caution that needs to be put into that.
I think it goes with just about anything that you might be interacting with. My biggest, I guess, personal response around artificial intelligence is if it's about ideas that you know a lot about yourself, you see the gaps in the information that are being regurgitated back to you. And a lot of times it sounds kind of correct, and it might be somewhere in that C plus range as far as being able to provide an answer. And I think that people who are using artificial intelligence effectively are smart enough about the content area to know the types of follow up questions to ask within artificial intelligence to be able to synthesize down and get better answers out of it. I think for a lot of people who are putting in information at first, if they're accepting the first or the second kinds of material that ends up being responses back, they're potentially at danger for not knowing what they don't know. And so it really is how you interact with artificial intelligence. And to me, this is falling where it ends up being something to talk about, but it falls outside of what therapy actually is to teach your clients how to use artificial intelligence in that way. And so if people are looking for more information about a diagnosis. If you're putting in your medical information, I would also talk with your client about, hey,
Don't do that.
those data things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But for being able to use it, a lot of times what I direct my clients to is share with your provider, share with me as your clinician what questions you might have because of what you're getting out of the AI responses. Don't necessarily take it as fact. That
Yeah.
it could be very, very true, but this is kind of teaching awareness around the limitations of artificial intelligence.
Well, and I think the way that you described it is a really good one. It's understanding where the use can be most effective. If you're experiencing medical things or mental health things and it's complicated, it's complex, you're not understanding everything, putting in basic information and asking questions about what does this mean, those types of things, that can be a good primer. Like it's not the end all be all, but if you prompted, and I got this from a class that I was taking or starting to take in the master class program, so I will, I guess, link to that in the show notes too. But if you put some basic information and say, "What do I need to know about this? What are three questions I should ask my doctor?" Then the questions are what you take to the provider. It can help you be a more informed patient or client versus what do I do? What does this mean? What is my diagnosis? Because the large language model that you're interacting with is only as good as where it draws information, and it's going to reaffirm whatever it is that you're focusing in on. Whereas a medical professional will, at times, I have a little bit of my own issues with medical doctors not necessarily seeing the whole picture, but an expert is going to look in the places that you don't know to look and will ask you the questions that you don't know to answer in order to get to a diagnosis, whereas the AI chatbot will take the information you have and put something together with it and may miss something entirely. And it can be the same thing that I would joke, like, don't go to Dr. Google because, every single thing that you have turns into, oh my goodness, you have cancer, right? So I think that using that skepticism and using it as thinking partner is a little bit too big, but I think it's the closest that I can get to, which is how do I come prepared? How do I know what questions to ask my doctor? How do I get more information? Where are some likely places for me to look at primary sources and read them myself? How do you summarize this thing that I have and let me make sure that it's accurate and that I've given the chatbot appropriate prompts to not hallucinate, to not be sycophantic, that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot there that's positive, but if your client doesn't seem capable of having that level of savvy or is not recognizing problematic use, I think then there's additional, kind of clinical beyond the scope of this conversation, additional clinical steps that you may want to take to support them in moving away from that over reliance on AI as a support, as a thinking mechanism, all of those things. So I think you're right. I don't think that this is, our job is not to teach our clients how to use AI. It's knowing enough about AI to be able to address any clinical impacts and mitigate risk related to, AI is not good for crisis response. AI doesn't hold confidentiality. It doesn't call you out in the way a therapist will. It's not sufficient for what we're able to do and what our responsibilities are as clinicians.
So now we also need to address for those clients who have already become dependent on AI.
Yeah.
And this becomes its own whole intervention process in and of itself because we've gone well past the, hey, this is a neat tool. And now this is my everything. This is my support
Yeah.
system. This is my girlfriend for some of the clients who are coming in. And I think that this is probably worthy of a much deeper dive in a potential another episode, but it's working on weaning off of AI. It's still a lot of what we've talked about already about validating the experience, about looking into the why, but it's also trying to take the needs that are being met and trying to get some of the clients to experiment with some of those ideas in the real world.
Yeah.
That for a lot of the relational aspects, that even when I've heard well-intended clients say, I'm trying to level up my social skills in order to be able to one day have a real girlfriend, we explored some of the ideas around what friction and disagreements and having to relate to people is actually an important part of building relationships, and about
Yeah.
being able to learn how to negotiate with people is a skill that artificial intelligence is not set up in order to help them learn how to do, and it's going to create unrealistic expectations about what it is going to be like in a real relationship. Now, one of two things happens there is clients will either agree with you or they'll disagree with you. And you say, this right here, what's happening right now in your disagreement, these are the skills that you're going to have to learn in order to be able to be in a healthy relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
So there is kind of that opportunity to do it right then. But I also wonder if there is a future market for therapists to become specialists in grief counseling for putting to rest AI girlfriends. That's going to
Mm.
be somebody's specialty someday. I'm coining it right now.
So I think to wrap this up, make sure that you're assessing AI use. Make sure that you're providing some psychoeducation on the risks, confidentiality, safety, sycophancy, relational harm. And then when you see some of these impacts, make sure that you're addressing them as you would any third wheel that's coming in and having a lot of impact on your client. Determine how you can replace some of these coping strategies with healthier coping strategies, how you can make sure that you mitigate risk, all that stuff. And so definitely more to discuss on AI and clients' use of AI. But we thought we would start with a quick, brief overview on what you might want to consider.
You can find our show notes over at mtsgpodcast.com. Make sure that you follow us on our social media, join our Facebook group, the Modern Therapist Group, to continue on with this and other conversations. And until next time, I'm Curt Widhalm with Katie Vernoy.
If running your practice feels like too many moving parts, Simple Practice pulls scheduling, billing, and client communication into one place.
Start with a 7-day free trial, then get 50% off your first 3 months at simplepractice.com.
You became a therapist to help people, not to spend your nights chasing invoices, troubleshooting software, or managing contractors and employees. It's time to stop wearing every hat in your business.
Visit buyingtimellc.com/MTSG to download your free systems inventory checklist and see what becomes possible when you have an entire team buying back your time.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. Learn more about who we are and what we do at mtsgpodcast.com. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter. And please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes.